Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talent Thrives Here, where we talk about all things talent related at work. I've assembled a group of, excuse me, assembled a group of recruiters. You've probably met them if you saw our last recruiting roundtable. We have from St. Louis, Missouri, Lisa Oxenhandler. Lisa's recruiting practice focuses on the insurance industry. Shane Fairchild out of Columbus, Ohio. Shane focuses on all things accounting and finance related in his recruiting business. And Mitchell Riley, last but not least, out of Houston, Texas, focuses his recruiting business on the disaster recovery business. Thanks, everybody, for joining me again today. Just a small plug for myself. Last but not least, I work across several industries, working with executive teams to help build or sometimes shrink companies as needed. And our focus is more kind of entertainment and digital tech. Anyways, thanks again for joining us. Welcome, everybody. I wanted to talk about some of the things that recruiters go through because everyone here clearly has been recruiting for some time and has some stories to tell. And I think there's also some misconceptions in the marketplace out there. So I want to kind of break down a few things. Ideally, having been agency and client side myself for a few decades now, I've worked exclusive contingency, retained, and a number of other ways for payment, including salary. Let me turn it over to the group. Do the majority of you work on exclusives or contingency? And when you're doing that, do you sometimes fight in the marketplace against other recruiters trying to fill the exact same roles?
Sure,
Turn
I'll
that
go
over to you.
first.
Yep, go ahead.
Almost all of what I do is contingent. What contingent means is my clients don't pay a dollar unless they hire one of my candidates. I usually try to educate them on why it's important to pick one agency. So that would be exclusive, right? I don't push for it. I don't make it a requirement for me. I love to compete. I grew up and played a lot of sports. So if it's a competition, it gets my blood going.
Yeah.
But what I do try to warn them about is we're in a really small niche. So if you get four different agencies all talking to the same candidates, it starts to make you look desperate. And I even ran across this not too long ago with a client looking for management talent. I call somebody that I knew probably day three of having the position set up. And when I get him on the phone, he's like, yeah, I've already talked to two other recruiters. Like, how desperate is this company? And I'm like, I can't really speak to that, but it wasn't a good sign. He got, he was feeling a little some type of way. I think he was going to bow out
Mm,
just because of that.
yeah.
Uh,
Lisa, would you do the same? Are you a contingent recruiter most of the time, or how do you work?
yeah, my industry also pretty much accepts contingency versus an engagement or
Right.
retained. But I have a question for Mitchell. Mitchell, how did you handle that with the employer? And were they surprised by that?
Yeah, so the first thing that I wanted to do was go back and confirm that they actually had the candidate, right? Because I came across this maybe 6 months ago in a different market. I found a great salesperson. She told me she had already talked to another recruiter. I decided to do my due diligence and call my client. They had never even seen her.
Mm,
So it would have just fallen totally through the cracks potentially. So that's what I did. I reached out to him, just made sure, hey, I just want to make sure you have this candidate. You're already talking to him. I gave him even positive notes on what I thought of him. And they said, yes, we are. And I said, okay, no problem. We'll keep our radar up. Did it diminish my motivation a little bit? Most of my sourcing had been done, but I'm certainly less likely to go back and resource the market, come up with even more people to reach out to because my odds of filling it and actually getting paid are significantly less now that I know there's a bunch of other people fishing in the same pond, right?
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Can
Fair enough.
I
Yeah,
ask
go
one
go
more
ahead, Lisa.
question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go for it, Lisa.
So if you have to rethink who you're sourcing and you went to the number one, the top, let's just say 10 in the first place, and now you're resourcing, does that mean that you're going to the top 20 and so the quality of candidate diminishes significantly?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, you've already started investing a lot of time and energy on it. So It's like, hey, look, if all the A's are already responded to whomever, and they may or may not be interested, now we're talking to B's and C's and D's. Like, there's only so many A-level candidates. You also have to think about who is the first point of contact that talked to these people. Um, Whoever's selling that opportunity and making sure that it's articulated properly is really important for the client, right? We're an extension of them. So
Yeah.
if it's not getting sold the right way, then the candidate's not coming to the table, and they'll just get back with me and be like, hey, yeah, I've already seen about this opportunity. I'm not interested.
If they get back to you.
If they even get back to you, sure. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and if I could jump in for a second too, I think the other thing is like, everyone's busy. Potentially this candidate now has 5 or 6 or more emails or in-mails in LinkedIn in his or her inbox. And now it's like, why are all these recruiters circling over this requisition? Why are they, like, and hey, I've already talked to 2. Could everyone else stop bothering me? Like from a candidate perspective, and again, that reflects poorly on the employer's brand in the market. That's the way I see it, right? Because I have a similar story from way back where I was working at a small company that was growing rapidly, and they said, call 5 to 7 recruiters, give them all the same jobs to fill, and just see who fills them first. And within about 4 or 5 days, a couple of them called back, and literally, like you said, Mitchell, they were like, "How many guys got working on this?" Because they were starting to get feedback from candidates. Hey, this is like the 5th call I've had on this. Like, get out of here, right? Um, and so, but at the time, the management team I was working with, they were like, no, this is our approach. We always do this. This is how we ramp up quickly. And I was sort of saying, guys, this is not a great approach. It might have worked before, but there's collateral damage on this. Like, please don't do this to your brand right now. Because and again, a small pool of candidates, they all know each other. They talk, so now you're like the coffee fodder for these folks. Oh, did they call you to, what a bunch of jokers. It doesn't reflect well on the company if they water it down too much like that. There's too many people, and good recruiters will be like, well, I think Shane, you might have mentioned it before in another conversation, but how much time am I going to invest trying to fill this role if there's all these other people trying to fill it and no one's been paid a dime? So
Absolutely.
Also, just to chime in, if it's okay, Lance, like
yeah,
from our perspective, and I think this is the thing that clients fail to realize, if you tell me you're working with 10 other recruiters, you're telling me there's a 1 in 10 chance on
yeah,
a contingent basis, okay, mind you. You're telling
yeah,
me there's a 1 in 10 chance that I might get paid for my time.
yeah,
Like that's not appealing to me. When somebody has skin in the game, and I know we'll talk about this momentarily with
yeah,
retained and engaged, where there's some money down and they put it down in deposit.
yeah,
That's more motivating because I know I'm going to fill the role. Like I'm good at my job and I actually care. The other problem I find with the contingent world is, everybody's just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
yeah,
They're not
yeah,
really vetting the candidates out and truly qualifying them and making sure that they're checking their motivations. They're
yeah,
just trying to get the candidate's resume over to the client so they can get their HR timestamp on to claim ownership. And as like
well,
that does no one any good, right? So if
yeah,
you just like, I mean, my big thing is if anybody else is going to find them, I'm going to find them. Like I am good at my job. I'm going to
right,
reach them. If I reach them like 2 hours later, what does it matter? I'm actually going to qualify them and make sure that
yeah,
it's a good fit for the right reasons,
yeah, yeah,
to
Yeah.
protect all parties involved. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I apologize. But that also brings me to a point. I have heard candidates say, don't send my resume unless we've spoken.
right,
I've heard of recruiters who will pull a resume off of LinkedIn, never having a
mm,
conversation
mm, mm,
with
mm.
the candidate. So
Yeah.
that
It's like
also,
they're Lisa, it's like they're trying to claim turf in the fight, right? Well, I've got this person,
exactly.
I've got that person, and I can remember a senior creative director many years ago. He said, "I feel like someone just scraped the bottom of their resume drawer and sent me over 20 resumes. Like they're junk. They're like he was so that's why he called us. He said, I just want to deal with one recruiter, and I want you to give me a very customized quality experience because the other guys have thrown to your point, Shane, keep throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping something sticks. And he said, it's a waste of my time. You know,
Well, and this is the thing too, like when I'm talking with clients and trying to educate them, you just got to put things into perspective, and you can pick any business. Like, I'll just give you a couple examples just to noodle on. So, when CPA firms reach out, right, and they want help for roles on at their company, they want to go contingent. And I'm like, well, hey, I got a proposition for you. I'd like to hire your CPA firm and 10 others to do my audit or my taxes for the next 2 to 3 months. And whoever does the best job, I'll pay you. Like
right. Yeah.
they'd laugh you out of the room. And same thing,
Yeah.
like if you go to a construction company and you want them to do build some project, right? Like you got to put a deposit down so they can pay for materials and the labor, because
Right.
they've got to, we've got hard costs that are involved. There's tools that we use and things like that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
using our time. But
Yeah,
anyways,
software licenses. There's all sorts of stuff we pay for, search tools, contractors. Yeah. So yeah, to your point. So let's pivot for a second because we talked about contingency and a little bit about exclusive. But I'll turn it over to you, Shane, because I know you don't work as much contingent. You work on an engaged model. Am I correct on that? Is that what you're?
yeah. So I would say 70% of my practice is engaged and retained.
Yeah.
30% I still do on contingent.
Mhm.
Typically I try to at least get exclusive contingent because I'm a jealous recruiter. I don't like you cheating with other recruiters on me, just to be frank with you. Like
Right.
I like a monogamous relationship, right? So
Right.
I care and I actually really want to deliver and do good work. And, I think my clients would attest to that. But no, just I know we were talking earlier about just to kind of define what those are, and Lance, feel free to chime in. On a
Yeah.
retained basis, you are working exclusively with one recruiting company for that search in entirety.
Yeah.
So they will handle the process end to end. The great thing about that model is you're vetting and qualifying every candidate equally so that
Right.
you can truly figure out who is the best and not just sending them just for the sake of sending them.
Right.
Like I think that's the problem I have with the contingent model because everybody's just it makes our industry look bad because everybody's just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks
Yeah. Well,
and not just doing the work. And go ahead.
Shane, I guess the counterpoint, clients say, well, this is too expensive and so on and so on. And there's, so that's sort of the hurdle. So a lot of people just say, well, look, I'll do it for free. And if you like it, so they pivot to that. But, I think talking about some of the challenges that we have in this kind of model, our business has always been give us a portion of the payment up front. We're only going to bill you the completion fee if we close successfully. So everyone's got some commitment financially at the beginning because my first couple months are costing me thousands of dollars in time and effort and work. And so, I think, you mentioned it earlier too. My analogy is always like, hey, contractor's going to build a deck on the back of your house. He or she needs a deposit to go buy materials. And that's all I'm asking. I'm asking for a percentage up front for me to cover my basic month or 2 or 6 weeks. And then the gamble or the performance metric for us is we have to close this with you and you have to close it with us. So, and now that they've put money down, they seem to be a little bit more interested in sort of focusing on the whole process. So anyways,
Well,
it's, and it's our district, and there's other things that, I know a recruiter overseas that just does executive search only. And he charges a third up front, a third, I think, at 60 or 90 days, and then the balance within a few months after that. But that's whether he's closing it or not. He's billing them the full fee, just stretched out over several months, knowing that 85 to 90% of the time, he's probably going to close that search in the first 6 or 8 weeks anyways. Like it's going to get done. But he's not waiting on his money.
right. This is the thing I like too with engaged and retained. They've got some skin in the game. They put down some money. They've deposited. The relationship dynamics change exponentially. Like you're a
Right.
trusted advisor and a partner with them. And in life, this is the thing I will tell you. Like, one, you get what you pay for, and you pay attention to the things that you pay for.
Mm.
So when they're paying money, they don't want that to go to waste. And, for me, like, I don't want to lose them as a client. I'm not just trying to take their money and run. I'm going to
Right.
deliver. I'm going to fill that role. And
Well,
it's the communication is so much better. Like, it's
Yeah.
we have status updates every week. Like, everybody knows what's going on. Everybody's in the loop.
Yeah. Well, Shane, I mean, to that point too, I always tell people I'm not getting rich off retainers, off deposits. Like it's a tiny portion of the job, so it's not a lot of money. But what it does sometimes protect you on is 6 or 8 weeks in, if it's a larger company, they change their mind on who they want in that role and they fill it internally, or um, something in their business changes and now they go, we don't need that senior director anymore because, that account's going quiet soon. And so let's not hire. But if you're on contingent, you might have invested 6 or 8 weeks time already with that client. And now they've pivoted, which is, obviously things happen. But you're left with zero money for your time. And that's why I've at least tried to cover with a small deposit up front. We usually ask for like $5,000 or $10,000 up front. And again, that's barely covering salaries for the first month or two. Like it's not covering salaries, quite frankly. So, even then I keep thinking I should raise the retainer up front, the deposit, because it just is what it is. But again, a little bit of money down. If they change their mind, at least we got paid for some portion of our work and we're not completely goose egged out of the whole thing. And I had a client years ago, I think we probably got 4 cancellation fees inside 1 year because their business was rapidly shifting and, multinational with thousands of people on the floor. And so they were fine to pay the sort of deposits because they knew they were inviting me into a chaotic environment as well. And they were hoping, if we do the job well, we'll stay in business for years together. So yeah, it's a different kind of sort of playing field for sure. Yeah.
So Lance, do you always, and I think Mitchell, you have incorporated this, a cancellation fee?
Lisa, I don't have one, but I think Mitchell does, right? Are we right, Mitchell?
Yeah, I've put it in there. I don't do it with existing clients. I will put it in there for new clients because
Yeah.
I just don't know them, right?
Yeah.
Don't know anything about them, so I try to protect myself on the back end, and it's twofold. One, it's a cancellation fee, and two, it's a ghosting fee. So
Right.
it's a failure to communicate. So if they're not reciprocating communication for 5 consecutive business days, you can charge them $10,000.
Right.
Um, I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. Just shoot me a text, email me, call me within 5 business days. Like everybody has a cell phone. That's not a huge ask, you
Right.
know. I did get one thought going as Shane was describing this with the CPA that I want to ask Lisa. Do you think the type of clients you recruit for, matters with their tolerance for swallowing a retainer, right? Like, I'm thinking when I shop my homeowner's insurance, I do shop it to like a bunch of agencies, right? And
Right,
whoever can get me the best rate is what I'm going to choose and go with. While there might not be a ton of like legwork to come up with however they create your pricing for your premium. And for restoration contractors, like they're working with insurance companies. They are covering the cost of your loss 100% until it's done and they get paid by the insurance, which is like sometimes 90 to 120 days after the job is done.
right.
They might require small deposits, like whatever your deductible was up front, or if you're paying cash, then they might ask for 50 and it turns more into a traditional GC. But do you think that how their business is set up, which is totally different than a CPA or an attorney, do you think that matters?
I do. And I also think not only industries, but level of a candidate they're looking for. The majority of roles that I work on are more support, the back office, with the exception of a producer. And I think that they're valued, but they aren't appreciated to the point of leadership. And I think maybe if I were to focus more on leadership versus those support roles, I'd have a better chance within my industry of convincing them that a retained or engaged
Well, and
search.
I'll tell you, Lisa, I mean, I've had it even for like staff and senior accountants and staff and, senior financial analysts, like where I've, mandated an engagement fee. just because for me, like I hate working for free. You know, if I'm going to
Mm.
do the work, I'm going to deliver. And the thing is like, you know, I'm all for competition. I've got no problem for that. Here's what I recommend to clients. It's like, hey, if you want to vet me out and 10 other recruiting firms, have at it. Have us come in, talk to us, figure out what our process is and what sets us different, you know, how we're different. And then figure out which one you want to go with. And I tell people like it doesn't have to be me, but as your friend and advisor, pick one. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you, like I've been doing
Right.
this for years. Like you don't have to pick me. No hard feelings. We can still be friends. Pick one recruiter. It's gonna save you headaches and I can share all the reasons why, but
And Shane, to me, key word there is advisor.
yeah,
We know a lot about the industry, probably as much and sometimes more with regard to the market than our clients because they're working within their four walls. We
Mhm.
hear stories, we know what's going on. So in my mind, you would think that would be valuable information, but oftentimes I don't know if our clients don't know or think or listen to us saying those things.
right.
Yeah, to your point there, Lisa, sometimes there's your your employees probably are not telling you everything because of their politics, or they're potentially afraid it could come out the wrong way or be perceived the wrong way. But to your point, recruiters are having confidential conversations with people all the time in the market. And
Mhm.
people will, as you know, people will offer you stuff for free. Hey, here's what I heard about yada yada yada, and you got to pick through to figure out what's rumor and what's fact and so on. But they will, in a safe space, say much more than they would to their employer. They'll
Right.
say it to us. And so we do often have, and I find it, I wanted to, one of the things that popped up in my head while we were chatting was the thought when you've got either a toxic environment or a toxic individual in a senior role at a company, and they start turning over people. People like, just go, I don't like working with this individual, so I'm leaving. And then it comes to a recruiter, and you kind of triage them, right? Like, how long's the role been open? Why is it open? you know
Mhm.
what are some of the factors around what I need to know ahead of time, so when I go in the marketplace, I'm not stumbling over some of the work you've already done. But big red flags sometimes when someone says the role's been open for 6 months and we haven't been able to fill it. I'm like, oh, I need the story on this before I wade in on that. And that's
Right.
Or
why I
they've
think
had three
sometimes,
declined offers, you know.
right, but that's why I was going to say, that's why I think the retainer sometimes is a little bit of security for me, because they might have had two or three other recruiters. I've had that call. Well, we've had three other recruiters over the last few years, but none of them really seem to get the job. And we have to keep re-educating them on our market. And I'm like, okay, you've got the wrong recruiter. If you're having to educate them on what you guys do for a living, you picked the wrong recruiter. They should already know your business, right? And if they know your business, now they can get focused on getting you the right people. But if they don't, you're all fumbling over each other, right? So, things like that. And then they say, well, your fees are too high. I'm like, well, you just told me you've had three other recruiters who can't do the job. I'm
Right.
asking you for a bit of money up front to prove ourselves. And also, my stuff costs money. So, if you want to get a quality experience, let's get in here and get going. But if not, go back to those other recruiters, because clearly they failed. It's hard to have some sort of a diplomatic conversation, but it's frustrating sometimes and time consuming, but it is an
Well,
active conversation.
and this is the thing too, like just to flip it back to clients, right? It's like, hey, I got a question for you. Do you work for free or do you get paid?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
Right.
mean, I mean, it's
yeah,
real
yeah,
simple. Like, do you get paid for your time? Cool. I like to too. I've got a family and wife and kids I got to take care of too.
yeah. Well,
We
the
got
the
bills
other
to pay.
thing, if you reverse engineer the timing on this, you might work for 30 or 60 days for the client before the whole process is finalized, right? First interview, second interview, offer. The offer takes a few days. Maybe that person drops out of the running. You now have the second candidate or the third candidate. That whole process can sometimes take several weeks. So at the end of, let's say, somewhere between 30 and 60 days, now you send your invoice. Now they pay that in 30 or 60 days. So you're not getting paid for 3 to 4 months. And this is why I remember a recruiter calling me years ago. And I said, how many open roles are you working on right now? And she said, 36. And I said, you're actually trying to fill 36 roles. And she said, Lance, only about a third of them ever close anyways. So I just have to keep cycling through hundreds of people and throwing them at my client until my client goes, that one, that one. So she actually admitted that only about 30% of these were going to close. So, she's wasting her time on the others is what I felt. And is she able to give a quality experience to any of the candidates or any of the clients involved in that? I don't think she has the time to, right? Because all of us know if we present one candidate, we probably interviewed 5 to 10 for that job. Like we're filtering,
At
we're
least.
screening, we're pre-screening. Exactly. Sometimes more, sometimes I go through 30 or 40 individuals to get a short list of 2.
Right.
And so when you present somebody, you've done a lot of work. Not always, because occasionally you get lucky and you go, oh, I know this candidate's the right person for you. But, that kind of rain doesn't fall every day. Quite often there's a lot of grunt work that gets in there. So it's I don't know, maybe I'm venting too much. Stop me now. But
But can I add something?
Please,
Which
yeah.
is kind of off the beaten path. But so it takes 30 to 60 or to 90 days for an employer to make a decision. We're not speeding things up for our own benefit. We're
Right.
speeding things up because those candidates are losing interest if you're taking
Yes.
that much time.
Yeah, very good
Well,
point.
they've got competing offers, and it's like time kills deals. And if you dilly dally, you could kick yourself because you lose the person that you wanted to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
And it drives me bonkers when people have to compare and contrast. I'm like, I've already done that for you. Like, I don't just send you junk. Like, I'm not trying to be
Right.
mean, but like, I'm trying to really qualify folks. And,
Well, but to that point, and if it's a small talent pool, you don't have another 10 winners in your back pocket,
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, or the other thing is if the client's willing to wait months and months, well, then the inventory of available people will change over several months. But they normally call you kind of in a panic. We need to fill this role in a month or two or we needed to fill it yesterday. We're behind
Right.
already. We just landed a project. We were adding 30 people. Our internal recruiter has already found 5, but we have another 5 open recs. We're going to sub some of them out to you and some of them to someone else. So, in that recruiting sort of menu or recipe, they might have a number of ways of finding people, but they know if they're in a time crunch, it might not be the best person for the job. It might be the best available person right now to do the job. And so I find in our business, that's more of what it's about. It's like, give me a scan of people that would do this job and are available and interested in possibly moving right now or within the next few weeks, because that's our urgency. And whereas if they were saying, well, we need a CEO sometime in the next year, that's, my analogy is always like, am I planning my daughter's wedding for next summer, or am I planning, the 13 busloads of kids coming into the diner this weekend? The two are completely different catering jobs, right? And it's the same. Do you need an individual to jump in this role in the next 10 days? Yes, I do. Okay. That to me feels like a short order cook. I'm going to get, how many cheeseburgers do I have to get ready? But, and I don't mean to make light of it. It's just a different pace. And if they do need a senior executive, when I get those roles, they're quite often a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 month search sometimes, because the chemistry, if we're going to put someone at the top of an organization, has to be bang on, has to be perfect. What is his or her vision? Do they line up? Do they understand the industry? That's a more, again, I can't have my daughter getting married next summer at this wedding and it going sideways. There's too much invested in this, right? So if I could use that analogy just as a
Or to use a
jokingly.
different analogy, am I looking for a life partner?
Yeah.
Or am I looking to date around?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Recruiting Tinder, Lisa.
Wipe.
Yes. Swipe left on or right. I'm not sure. All right. Well, look, this is fun. I hope this is an engaging conversation. I think you'll all agree the contingency model is very widespread in many industries that I've worked in, and I'm sure that you've worked in as well, for recruiters and clients. And so I think there's pros and cons. And, in a perfect world, I'm just curious if there was an improvement on the business model. We've probably kind of kicked this over. But I'm curious, if you could even tweak it 20, 30%, what would be better than straight contingency?
Like in my mind, I really truly like engaged because
Yeah.
it's the best of both worlds. Like, let's say a client will put down 25 to 33% deposit. The
Yeah.
total fee doesn't change, just the timing of the payments, right? So
Right.
that deposit is deducted off the back end. The good thing is like they're showing commitment, they're serious. I'm gonna go do the work, right? And
Yeah.
then two, like even if they want to use their internal resources and internal recruiting team, if they happen to find somebody, they don't have to pay the other, 75 to,
Right.
percent or whatever we agree on. Like,
Yep.
but at least I get something for the time that I've invested. They would just lose like the engagement fee, right? But they can
Right.
still hire someone on their own if they get a referral from somebody, like in my
Yeah.
mind, I think that's the best of both worlds, but and
Sure.
it's worked for me. It's worked for me, but
Mitchell and Lisa, if I could turn it over to you, would the at least the engagement period? I had a client millions of years ago that said, "I'll give you 6 weeks to prove yourself. After that, I'm opening up to this market to other recruiters." Does that make sense? Does that work for you?
Yeah, because 7 times out of 10, I was going to say 9 times out of 10, which
Right.
is probably more accurate.
Yeah.
I'm going to find people for you to meet within
Right.
that 6 weeks. And if you don't like them, at least we can adjust our search.
Sure.
But
Sure.
that right person might be within that first 6 weeks. And generally it is.
Yeah. Mitchell, would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I exclusivity makes a ton of sense. I think it's a good thing for the clients. I think it's a great thing for the recruiters. I'll provide just a counter perspective to Lance on the engagement thing on why I prefer contingent.
Mm.
Sometimes you can feel like you're swimming with a golden brick. I think it was Trisha who said that in class one time, and I never knew how to like articulate it.
Right.
But if I
Right.
have a bad client, like say it's a new client I didn't know about, or even if it's an existing client that had a management change and things are falling apart,
Yeah.
I'm not stuck with them. I'm not married to them. I can go
Yeah.
wherever. Um, I also in a recruiting summit, I wish I remember the guy's name, but he was talking about how like he'll play matchy matchy in a marketplace. I don't typically do this, but it got my wheels going. If you've got a good estimator in a market like Houston and you have 4 different clients, you get them
Right.
talking to 4 different people and you're helping your candidate find the best opportunity for
Yeah.
them. If
Yeah.
you're
Right.
if you're retained, now I'm not doing my client the best service, but I'm
Right.
absolutely helping my candidate get the very best offer for them.
Yeah.
If I'm on a retained model and you're doing that with 4 different people, like, that's not good. But a
Right.
contingent, you haven't paid me $1. I am not, and unless we have an existing relationship, there's no loyalty there
Yeah.
because you're not loyal to me. You're giving it to 4 other recruiters. I already know that. So when I come across a great manager, I can pivot and say, well, hey, what other companies interest you? Oh, well, I'm interested in XYZ too. Great.
Yeah.
Let me go start a conversation for you there and get that
Yeah.
going. So there's some values for recruiters that go
Sure.
contingent, and I'm a big math guy. I track the metrics. Like it's a very predictable model and predictable business because human
Mm.
nature takes over. Where retained kicks up and your fill rate goes up, right? Like the
Yeah.
reason Shane, like I can fill these orders is because you have a serious buyer. They've already put money in your pocket. They're hiring somebody because they're already invested. Contingent, unfortunately, not everybody's honest. Sometimes they might be top grading. And yeah, I'll hire somebody if they're significantly better than what I already have. But they
Right.
don't tell you that going in.
Right.
correct.
So
Right.
so there's a lot you don't always know until you start out. But in contingent, human nature takes over, and my fill rate every year is the exact same on orders I work.
Yeah.
Candidate response rate's usually the same, and we'll submit 80 to 90% somewhere in that range with somebody with the qualified hard skill sets. Like you can't
Right.
get that on a job order anywhere else.
Right. Yeah. No.
Well, and this
Go ahead, Shane.
and
Go ahead.
yeah, sorry, I was just going to say one thing, Mitchell. You brought up a good point, like differences between contingent and retained or engaged. For you, if you're contingent, since the client's not loyal to you and there's no exclusivity, you're going to, in essence, shop your inventory like the candidates around to multiple different clients. And the theory is, well, I don't care which job they take, because I'm still going to get paid for my time. Whereas, for me, if I'm doing an engaged or retained, like, obviously I care about all parties involved, but ultimately, like, the client is the one that's paying me, and I have a fiduciary duty to fill that role. So for
Right.
me, like, I'm not taking that candidate and I'm not sending them to other companies. Like, my client is getting first right of refusal. If they tell me that they're not interested, then I can, send them to
Right.
another company. But, hopefully that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And if I may, I guess I'm kind of an idiot. I only take on one client in any given market, so I can't play matchy matchy. I'm like doing the worst of both worlds because I'm
Right.
like I've always found that like shop them around four different places is kind of greasy.
Yeah.
And it's I don't think clients would appreciate that unless you're being really transparent with them saying, hey, I'm taking these to three other people. This guy at this recruiting summit yesterday. That's what he did with his clients.
Yeah.
And but
Yeah.
he recruited only lawyers, so it made a lot of sense in that business model. Retained didn't work because when a partner, a lawyer who has, a book of business, revenue clients, however you want to put it, is ready to make a move, they want to find their best option, right? So I think
Yeah.
the type of candidate, the industry you're in, all that matters. It's so hard to find talent in restoration. If I've got a good estimator and I take them to my client, even if they don't have an opening, they're probably going to hire them
Mhm.
because they're one cat event, one freeze, one hurricane, one whatever away from being buried and turning away business, right? So
Right.
if they have to eat a $70,000 salary for a year and see what happens with the weather events, a lot of times they'll do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Mitchell, I think you just explained why so many recruiters in the past have done what we in the industry call NPC marketing,
mhm.
because we are trying to spread that candidate on a contingency model. We are trying to help that candidate find the right job.
Hmm.
And to Shane's point, with an engaged search, first right of refusal, we're going to try and do everything we can to not have that candidate out interviewing elsewhere.
Right.
But if they're
Yeah.
out interviewing on their own, we need to benefit as well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my thing is this, like, I encourage people, like, if they want to interview with other clients, that's fine. Like, at the end of the day, I want them to always do what's best for them and their families, right? Like, genuinely, and I surely mean that.
Me
For me,
too.
I just ask for just open communication, like honesty and open communication. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, like, I'll find somebody else. But, for me, I don't know. I don't want the candidate that I'm working with to think I don't care about them either, even though the company is the one paying the fee. Like, I do. I actually really do, for all parties involved. I just want it to make sense.
Yeah.
Right. Well, on that point, Shane, they'll come back to you time and time again, right? If you do the right thing,
Exactly.
generally over time, they're like, well, he's a solid guy. He's earnest. I appreciate that. He's not going to BS me. He's going to be transparent about stuff, and because everyone else has horror stories about someone who wasn't.
Correct.
And so I think, if you're doing that job well and being as transparent as possible, then that's hopefully what they should expect from everyone. But, sometimes that's not the case. So, it's to me, it's, the whole CRM, customer relationship management. We have sort of two customers. One is the candidate base and one is the client base. And you have to treat both with respect. You have to do as good a job for one as the other. And some recruiting shops I've seen put a higher focus on one versus the other. It's all about clients. Forget about candidates. We can get a million more of those tomorrow. You can't. If you're crap in that garden, the tomatoes don't taste good. Like you have to be gardening on both sides properly and then, growing both sides, because some of those candidates could become a client one day and they'll remember that you treated them poorly. And so, you're only harming yourself long term, whether you're a business owner, a recruiter, or anybody. You've got to do the work respectfully and keep everyone as engaged as possible. I know there's hiccups and sometimes things get crazy sometimes, but you've got to do your best to keep everyone involved and not, we talked about it last time, ghosting anybody. And again, hopefully those efforts pay off over time, right?
Well, and let's face it, residual business keeps us in business, and referrals keep us in business on both sides.
Yep.
So if we're treating both sides well, and they're coming back to us or telling their friends and family about what a great job we did,
Yep.
that's helpful to everyone.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Well, look, I'm just conscious of the time. I'm going to wrap up. Unless anyone has any final comments, we'll close for today. Anybody want to add anything that's been kicking around since we started chatting?
I mean, I'll tell you, Lance, this was a great conversation. I mean, we could easily spend another hour going
Oh,
through
yeah.
this stuff. I mean, easily, like this is just scratching the surface, but really,
Yeah.
appreciate you having us on today.
No,
Thank you,
thanks again.
man.
I enjoy this. I was kind of a little cathartic, so I apologize if this was, just venting a bit. But I just find there's a lot of misconceptions in the business, and that's why I thought having you on and chatting about some of the stuff that goes on behind the closed doors and the commission structures and things like that, and the different ways that people get paid. Hopefully, we shed a little light on some of the challenges that recruiters do go through, because it's it's not for the faint of heart, this business, right? It's there are a lot of moving pieces and a lot of people to please along the way, and getting paid for that sometimes is one of those challenges. And I think I might have said before I had another conversation, but whenever I tell my sister how this business works, her eyebrows go off her forehead. She's like, "You've got to be kidding me!" Why are you doing that? It's like you're throwing yourself into a hot mess. But anyways, thank you all for being on the podcast again today. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you all soon. Thanks very much again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.